From Vermont Public, this is The Frequency. I'm Bob Kinzel, filling in for Mitch Wertlieb. It's Wednesday, March 26th, and here are today's headlines. The Vermont House yesterday gave its final approval to legislation impacting the future licensing of retail cannabis shops. Currently, there are cannabis hotspots in Vermont, partly because local approval is needed to open a store. There are roughly 110 retailers statewide, with 13 in Burlington, 7 in Rutland, and 5 in Morrisville. To prevent further clustering, lawmakers initially considered a 2-year moratorium on new retail licenses. Instead, they're giving the State Cannabis Control Board greater authority to deny future licenses in already congested areas. James Pepper chairs the board.
What the legislature authorizes us to do now is to look at regional populations, like not, maybe countywide populations, and cap the number of retail locations based upon areas in the state, not just municipal borders.
The bill now goes to the Senate, where some lawmakers are likely to push for higher potency limits and to create a pilot program to allow small growers to sell directly to the public. The Vermont House also gave its final approval to a new version of a midyear spending bill yesterday, lawmakers' second attempt at the annual legislation after their first try was shot down by Governor Phil Scott. But the Republican governor has signaled he won't sign off on the new version of the Democrats' plan. The two sides disagree on the future of Vermont's motel voucher program. Democrats want a 3-month extension for all people currently sheltered through the program. The Scott administration has proposed extending stays for a much smaller group. And there's a ticking clock. If Democrats and Republicans can't agree on the motel program's immediate future and get a bill signed by the end of the week, a new round of motel program evictions will begin next Tuesday. New Social Security rules could make it more difficult for Vermonters to access benefits. Starting April 1st, prospective Social Security recipients will need to apply for benefits in person if they can't verify their identity using the agency's online program. Phone verification will no longer be allowed. The new rules also apply to current beneficiaries who make changes to their accounts, like adding new banking information or changing their address. Vermont only has 3 Social Security offices in Burlington, Rutland, and Montpelier. And Greg Marshaldon with AARP Vermont says they can be difficult to reach for rural residents.
The fact that we have a lot of beneficiaries that live in places where one of the offices is not easily available. It's going to be a real hardship for them if you don't drive. You have to find someone to get you there.
The Trump administration says the rule changes are needed to reduce fraud. Another move by the Trump administration could mean big cuts in federal funding for Vermont libraries. That's because President Trump signed an executive order calling for gutting the Federal Institute of Museum and Library Services. The agency provides over $1 million to Vermont libraries each year, which pays for the interlibrary loan system, access to thousands of video courses and test prep materials, and for books at correctional facilities and other state institutions. Kathy Delnio, the Vermont State Librarian, says federal funding makes up a third of their budget.
We're providing things with these federal funds that are helping to keep school database costs down, local library database costs down. We're offsetting costs that would fall to folks at the municipal level otherwise.
Vermont libraries have federal funding through June. Coming up, new research from the University of Vermont highlights the surprising importance of whale waste. More on that right after this.
Thanks for listening to The Frequency, where support comes from VITA, supporting business growth and innovation in the Green Mountain State. From agriculture to manufacturing, energy to food production, find solutions that turn your business dreams into reality. Visit VEDA.org and see how VITA can help make it happen.
A new study from the University of Vermont finds whale pee. That's right, whale pee is a critical part of ocean ecosystems. Whales, the biggest animals on Earth, travel from the Arctic to tropical seas to birth their calves, and the waste they leave there is chock full of nutrients. Vermont Public Climate and Environment reporter Abigail Giles spoke with researcher Joe Roman to learn more about his findings.
Can you tell me a little bit more about just how much nutrients these animals are carrying across the ocean, and what are they eating and what are they doing to release them?
One is through placentas, and whale placentas can be several hundred pounds when it's released into the ocean, and we've seen sharks feed on those placentas. Two is carcasses. What we found that we didn't expect was that urine is the primary pathway for the essential elements. Why urine? Well, you die once. You have your birth once a year, but you're peeing every day. And one estimate for fin whales is about 250 gallons a day that they're peeing. Humans pee about half a gallon. So you can see why, okay, all this, in this case, we were looking at nitrogen, and all this phosphorus is getting into these areas like Hawaii and the Caribbean. If you've ever been there, you probably think of clear blue waters. One of the reasons that their waters are so clear is they're nutrient limited, often nitrogen limited. Whales are bringing in, we estimate, about 4,000 tons of nitrogen per year. We also had about 4,000 tons of biomass coming from Alaska to Hawaii every year. That's comparable to about 10 million Big Macs.
It sounds like we're talking about almost a sort of like desert in the ocean. But in terms of those tropical ecosystems that are nutrient poor, that are getting the benefit of all this nutrient transport, what is that nitrogen doing to support life there?
One way that nitrogen can be picked up is in the phytoplankton or the marine algae. And that's one of the reasons those areas are pretty clear, is because you don't have a lot of phytoplankton. If you go off the coast of New England, the waters would be murkier. That can be cycled through to the fish populations in those areas, possibly getting into corals as well.
Was there anything that made your stomach turn or was kind of gross a little bit in doing this research?
It's never pleasant to step inside a whale that has died, that is stranded and rotted for a couple of days. It's pretty stinky every day that goes by. Right whale feces is one of the strongest smelling and most challenging feces to collect and analyze of any species that I've found. Whale pee, we more watch it than collect it.
I had to ask. I think I saw in the study that you estimate that before commercial whaling, whales would have been transporting maybe 3 times as much nutrients as they are now. So I'm just curious, how is this cycle changing, and is it threatened by climate change as well?
We'll start with the bad news, good news, and then maybe the questionable news. Bad news is, for about 1,000 years, we were commercial whaling, and the goal was never sustainability. It was basically serial depletion. You go one place, you harvest them as hard as you can, and you go somewhere else. By the 1960s, many whale species were on the point of extinction. The good news is, in the 1970s and 1980s, the U.S. passed the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Endangered Species Act, and then the International Whaling Commission put a moratorium on whaling. And across 50 years, the response has been, for many species, remarkable. Your last question was about climate change. It seems unlikely that whale populations, at least in the southern hemisphere, will be sustainable as the oceans heat up. And why is that? Because different organisms are going to thrive in a warmer ocean. So one study suggests that krill populations, which support fin whales and humpback whales especially, will decline, and it's likely that populations will decrease with climate change.
Well, Joe, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
That was University of Vermont researcher Joe Roman speaking to Vermont Public's Abigail Giles. Thanks for listening to The Frequency today. We had additional reporting from Carly Berlin and Lexi Krupp. Our executive producer is Kevin Trevelyan, and our music is by Blue Dot Sessions. I'm Bob Kinzel. Talk to you later.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.